Welcome to VesuvITas Verified, where we get the pleasure of interviewing emerging customer experience technology thought leaders. At VesuvITas, we listen, lead, and design optimized customer experiences. For those of you who have joined today, my name is Sebastian Anthony Corrieri. I am the Chief Contact Center and CX Strategist for VesuvITas. And today we have an awesome guest today that I've been looking forward to interviewing for a while now. Kurt Dahlstrand, Director of Technical Services at Hammer. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you, Sebastian. Great to be here.
So I know you have a super busy schedule, so I'm very excited that you're able to join today. And I know we have a very short window today. Hopefully we can do a part 2 very soon. But without any further delays, let's jump in. One of my passions is understanding how people kind of got into what it is they're doing right now that kind of lays the foundation for their own personal passions when it comes to technologies that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, well, for me, and I think I probably can speak for a lot of folks that are in the contact center technology industry. It was kind of happenstance as I got into it. As I was in my winter break in my last year of college, I had a friend who had a friend that was hiring and interviewed with a company called Hammer and was offered a job a few months later. And so as soon as I wrapped up college, I started in. So for me, I didn't.
Wow.
This term of telephony wasn't really something that rolled off my tongue. It wasn't something I really knew what it meant. And so for me, over the years, what I really enjoy about this industry is the fact that number one, I love technology, but as a consumer, it's something that we deal with every day. So understanding how the technology actually works behind the scenes and what actually does make a good or bad customer experience and what goes into that is really what keeps me excited about it.
I love hearing when people kind of started their career in a contact center and never left. It's this interesting animal that just kind of sucks you in and you fall in love with it or you don't. And to hear someone that has that kind of a background, has been on the phones, understands what it's like to work there, and then goes onto the other side to try to solve those technology issues and, people, process, technology, business outcomes type solutions, I think is fascinating. And I think it's almost critical to really be able to be effective on the other side, but we'll save that topic for another day. So as we talk to customer experience thought leaders, many people who may be watching this now and in the future may not immediately recognize the Hammer brand as a CX technology. And so I'll just kind of level set for the people who may not be familiar. Now, there are several different tools that Hammer offers, and we're going to kind of go into those in great detail. But oftentimes, when companies are looking at CX, they're not looking at the ways to prevent a bad experience from a technology perspective that's not immediately tied to the technology that they are actively going to be delivering that experience across, right? We're talking about contact centers here. And then oftentimes, they may not even be aware, right, that either the operations leaders or the IT technology stakeholders, they may not be aware of that there are technologies and tools that can help to monitor the customer experience and ensure that businesses are delivering a great customer experience. Let's unpack some of the technologies that Hammer has, and we can discuss why it is actually a CX enabler, right? Preventing a poor experience and ensuring that you're continuing to deliver a great experience. So you have several different products. We'll just talk about a few of them today. We'll get through as many as we can. I know you have the Hammer Voice Explorer, Hammer On Demand QA, Hammer On Demand Performance. You have Voice Watch. You have Hammer Ohm. Let's go ahead and start with one of the ways that I first became familiar with your company years ago when I was on basically doing consulting for a large business enterprise. There's about 100,000 employee company, and they were rolling out a new contact center. We found out about you due to your load testing functionality to make sure that we could prevent a bad experience from happening, knowing that we could actually have a capacity of a certain amount of calls. And this is important for a critical infrastructure like this was an energy company, a utility. They have to make sure during hurricanes they can actually meet those expectations before they went live. And it's not always a responsibility of the CCAS or the contact center solution provider to deliver that. Let's start there, and then we can go to the other technologies and tools, because I think that's critically important to start there.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess the first thing I'd say is that use case that you referenced a number of years ago is still really very relevant today. There's a lot of change and disruption going on in the contact center technology industry today. The cloudification. There are a lot of newer vendors and players. There are a lot of familiar names as well with newer capabilities that's driving a lot of that change.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say from the Hammer perspective, we are all about assuring that customer experience from a technology standpoint. So when there is change, and typically strategic change, where there's a big investment being made in some new technology, sometimes even just ongoing change. There are certain industries, utilities is a great example. There's a defined peak busy season to the traffic, tends to be in the winter season, right? And then you have a governing body, in the Public Utilities Commission, where they're actually these utilities are obligated to ensure that their customers can contact the utility when there's some kind of an emergency with power delivery or gas delivery. And so there are other instances as well, but the point is, when there's a lot of potential risk associated with introducing new technology into that customer experience, that's really what Hammer focuses on. And so we like to talk about, sort of reference the software development lifecycle, and the fact that there's a defined set of phases that you go through when you're introducing that new technology. There's the design of it. There's the initial kind of lab implementation of it. There's starting to implement the application.
There's POCs.
There's then going live with it in production, and then it's sort of that ongoing care and feeding. And so when we kind of look at technology from that standpoint, our solution set really is intended to align with that. So if a given customer is really forward thinking and is planning ahead for a large technology change, they can start really from that ground floor. If they're maybe realizing at maybe the 10th or 11th hour that, oh shoot, we really should be thinking about how we load test this to the capacity that we need to support, that's something that we can kind of jump in and do that testing last minute. We have to, but the point is they're different use cases, and we can dig a little bit deeper into those if we want. That are going to support different needs depending on where that customer is in that technology journey.
I agree with you, Kurt. A lot of times people think that just because you're rolling out a cloud contact center solution, it has, loosely, infinite capacity, right? And they kind of just kind of take it for granted, right? Instead of validating some things. Also with this, as companies are migrating from on-premise and they have these hybrid solutions that are intermediary steps, and they're connecting, all these sometimes with an SBC or, a cloud SBC, and how do you validate that you have ordered enough SIP channels, even though did they actually deliver that many, and trying to connect all these things. So I would imagine, or I would argue, that it's actually even more important today than it might have been before to validate these infrastructures as they're getting deployed. So an incredibly important tool to have, an arrow in your quiver, so to speak. And we can talk about additional use cases down the road, but very powerful tool. I'm a big fan. Um, what One of the other things that I was fascinated by, that I'm actually we've positioned with our clients, is the idea of this, almost like a CX validation or CX assurance, right? This ensuring that everything is working the way you expect. Everything from, but and I don't want to steal your thunder there, because I think you're super passionate about this. So go ahead and dive in and talk about it, because I can't wait to share additional details of why I find there's value in it too.
Yeah, I mean, so for us, there may be different names for it. A baseline assessment, perhaps even a performance assessment. But the idea is really trying to reproduce the conditions that your technology would see in sort of day to day operation, but doing this really from an automation perspective. And so when we talk about testing the customer experience, what we're doing is we're leveraging kind of the namesake today, bots and automation, right? So we have our Hammer software where we effectively build these test scripts that will mimic or emulate what a customer is doing. And this might be from a voice perspective, could be from a chatbot perspective. But the point is, when we do this, for one, we're going through that journey that customer would be with a particular customer. Secondly, as humans,
That's fantastic. So let's unpack that just a little bit. So you can design these business use cases with the customers and ensure that from start to finish, the entire user experience is functioning. And this is something that can be done automated once they've been checked off and validated, and all the logins and everything is working the way it's supposed to. But you can also do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because a lot of, and you're talking about, validating that phone numbers are up and running. You're talking about that the IVR options are responding the way they're supposed to. You're talking about that someone can, mimic that actual customer with their account information, and then confirm that it's retrieving the right data and presenting it to that customer. Uh, but as I understand it, you can also take it a step further and even validate uh, the time that it's taking for those responses to happen with those API calls and the database responsiveness. And you can have a dashboard to identify and monitor these things. And those are actionable, right? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
absolutely, yeah. So as humans, we kind of intuitively know what a good or bad customer experience is. And again, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really kind of speaking from the technology standpoint. A good example of this would be, uh, you call into, again, maybe it's utility. You call in and the phone starts ringing and it's ringing and it's ringing, and maybe it does pick up, but you don't hear anything. And maybe 10 seconds later, if we'd waited, we would have heard the opening IVR prompt. But who's going to wait that long? You're going to hang up. And so
Right.
from a test automation standpoint, we're looking at these different triggers, and we're looking at this really in two different ways. One is from kind of an under the covers signaling perspective, if you will. When phone calls are placed, there's different messaging that happens through that telephony network. We're capturing and paying attention to that different messaging. So we're getting response time measurements at that level, but then we're also looking at, from the IVR application layer, when prompts are being played, how quickly are we actually hearing a prompt? Are we hearing the correct prompting?
Hmm.
When authentication might take place. If I'm entering my, account number, policy number in the IVR, how quickly is that coming back? Because at this point in time, we're now starting to get into the intricacies of these contact center systems, where they're actually myriad of different subsystems that are integrated together. There's going to be a backend database that houses all of that customer data that needs to be queried for that authentication to take place. And I would also say, when we talk about this customer journey, it doesn't just end with communicating with an automated self-service system, right? Many times, as consumers, when we're calling into these companies that we do business with, we're looking to solve a problem, and oftentimes we need to speak with another human to solve that problem, right? So oftentimes our end destination is getting to an agent. And so when we talk about automation, we'll use the term end-to-end testing quite often. And that's not just the idea of automating the front end, the consumer journey, but it's also automating the back end with the agent. And so in this situation, we're automating that agent logging into the systems that agent logs into. That might be, the vendor system, Genesis or Nice CX1 or Amazon, or it could be the communication device they use, right? When we're speaking, like we are today, there's a phone, right? The phone may not be what it historically was.
Yeah.
The phone's our computer in this case, but we also need to be able to manage and automate the phone side of it and measure that, right? So when we talk about how we do that from an end-to-end standpoint, it gets into looking at things like voice quality. What does your voice sound like? What does my voice sound like? Things like screen pop. When my call arrives at an agent, how quickly is that agent seeing my customer information pop up on their screen? So we're looking at all of those measurements, sometimes individually, but generally in aggregate, to really determine, was this a good customer experience or not? And perhaps doing that at scale for load testing or ongoing for monitoring.
That's fascinating. I've been on the contact center side. I grew up in that business. I managed contact centers. But back when I was doing that on the business side, we had tools that would, identify if a server was up and running, if an executable was running or a service, but maybe not. But for the phone system components, that was that wasn't really available from an ongoing monitoring all the way that granularly to be able to give actionable information. And it's, IT organizations now are clamoring for this type of tool, especially since it's actually quite inexpensive compared to the cost of losing even a single customer, right? So talk to me about a dashboard that either an operations team or an IT operations knock, or talk would be looking at, and how can it be automated to let them know, hey, you need to act on this, and what are some of the things that it can trigger for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the audience we're dealing with, there may be certain measurements that they hone in on, whether it's from an SLA standpoint, but typically we kind of start from the high level of, is the test call passing or failing? And when we talk about failing, there are going to be different criteria that we have set up in that test script. Of course, if our test call gets dropped for some reason, that's going to cause it to fail. But we can also do things like set thresholds. So we talked about this idea of response times, right? If these prompts are taking longer than normal, we may have response time set up for those. So that's typically the starting point, is sort of defining that failure criteria, honing in those thresholds. And then at that point, it's really just ensuring that you've got base alerting set up on those customer journey test scripts that we've got set up. So if we're seeing any of these alarm thresholds get exceeded, typically what we've got set up is a retry mechanism. And that's really there to ensure there are always going to be, I guess I'd say, blips on the radar. We've all experienced this, whether in our professional technical lives or just as a consumer. where you could place a call into a given contact center and the call drops, something bad happens. You could place 100 calls after that, and you're never going to be able to reproduce that. So from a monitoring standpoint,
Right.
getting back to your idea of actionable, right? That's really the goal. Is if we're going to raise up an issue that's impacting our test callers, we want to ensure that that's a reproducible issue. So the retry mechanism is there just for that.
Makes sense.
We get a failure condition, we're immediately going to retry that exact same test case, and potentially on that attempt, or if we want to even do a second retry after that, to really ensure that it is reproducible. That's really kind of the idea. And then above and beyond that, some individuals are focused very specifically on certain measurements. That might be like a voice quality measurement. We've got a customer in the healthcare insurance industry where they rely on a number of business processing outsourcers to handle their agent staffing. And so for them, having eyes on voice quality is super important. In fact, they use that voice quality measurement that we provide as a SLA to ensure that their vendors are actually doing what they should be doing.
That's fantastic. So as part of your use case where you're transferring a call to a live agent, you'll know the quality of that call, MOS score, and then you can alert off of that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super important with the remote work that is here to stay, right?
Yes,
so when we're talking about actionable, more than just setting alert on a dashboard, can you trigger an email? Can you trigger an API call that would open an IT service ticket? What are some of the options there?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Email, SMS. We're seeing a lot more customers today in more of this DevOps world where they're looking to kind of leverage best of breed tools. And so very quickly you're getting down to the API layer of things. And so for our platform, really everything that you can do in the UI is driven by an API framework. And so whether that's to the point of you wanting to schedule certain automated tests based on other activities, maybe a release cycle when some changes are made in the IVR application, and that gets pushed into production in the middle of the night. Then you want to go and trigger, your top 20 customer use cases, and just do that from an API level. Absolutely. Same thing with the alerting standpoint. If you want to just get notified and have that presented in your, BI dashboard of choice, that can be done.
So again, we could opine on this and geek out really on this technology as more with more time that we have today. And I would love to have you back on again in the future. We're almost out of the window of time that we have together. Before I let you go, what do you think are some things, and I hate to put you on the spot here, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but what do you think are some things that trends in CX that we should be looking out for, into the future? And how do you think maybe even some of this technology is going to morph and improve?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we probably could talk about this for a while too. I mean, the one obvious one, which I wouldn't say is new, but is still evolving, is CCaaS, and we're still seeing that evolve. With new players, Zoom, Microsoft, which they've had obviously they've been in on the UC side for quite some time. I think it's just a matter of time before we see them making a bigger splash on the contact center side. Amazon, Google from the more of the kind of design side of things. And speaking of Google, I think this kind of leads into the next trend that we're seeing more of, which is conversational IVR, also referred to as IVA. And I think
Right. Uh-huh.
for those of you watching that may not really know what this is, it's really the idea of historically when we think of calling into a customer in a contact center, you have this dialogue driven turn taking that's more menu driven in the sense that you can press one for this, press two for that, or you can say this or you can say that. This new world we're getting into is really trying to take this IVR self-service into more of a conversational mode where it's just tell me what you want
Mm-hmm.
to do, right? And this underlying system being smart enough to be able to react to that and in fact even learn from that and be able to adapt to that. So I think that's something we're absolutely going to see a lot more of in the next couple of years. We're starting to see more of it.
Yep.
I think we're also going to see more of systems that are not only adaptive in how they can respond to what callers are asking for, but also the way that they're asking for those things or responding to those things, right? Um, and I kind of think of this from a perspective of really how the industry's changed a lot in the 20 odd years I've been involved. Where when I kind of started, the contact center was kind of looked at sort of a cost to the business. It was sort of a necessary evil. We need to have a phone number so customers can call in
Mm-hmm.
and we can help them. But it's very much changed where I
And
think
essentially complain.
yeah, exactly. And not to say that that's not what a lot of consumers are still doing, but I think from a business standpoint, things have changed dramatically where these customer contacts are looked at as opportunities, right? Opportunities to get closer to the customer, improve the relationship with them. And so if you can imagine, a high value customer calling in that may already be upset because they're probably trying to get a problem resolved and they've gone to the website, they've maybe tried the chatbot, they're investing time. If I've got an angry customer on the phone and I've got an opportunity to identify that really quickly, even at the IVR level before they get to an agent, and I can effectively default route that call to an agent who's specially, designed to service high value customers who may not be happy with what's going on. I've got an opportunity to really make that a lifetime customer, right? If I can go and turn that situation around, resolve their problem, do that quickly, that's huge. So I think there's a lot of exciting technology that's still to come in this industry that we're in.
Yeah. And we're gonna look forward to unpacking that with you on the next time that you're on VesuvITas Verified. I would like to thank you, Kurt, for joining us today on VesuvITas Verified. I know your time is at a premium, and you are in high demand. So thanks for making the time today. And for those of you who are attending today and listening live or watching later, if you want to know more about some of the Hammer offering, you can reach out to us, and we'll put you in contact with Kurt. You can either send us an email at info@vesuvitas.com or reach out and send us a DM on different social media platforms for VesuvITas. And we'll have a form link that you can fill out where you may see this video pushed out in the future. So again, thank you very much for your time today. I am Sebastian Anthony Corrieri. I've been your host from VesuvITas, where we are changing the world one extraordinary customer experience at a time. Have a great afternoon, everyone, wherever you're at, daytime or evening in different parts of the world.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate your time today. Appreciate you. We'll catch up soon.
Sounds great.